You know what we're doing with the agenda?
Yes.
You know what you're doing with the agenda? Because I do.
Will, two in a minute.
Okay, it's 7:32. All right, it's 7:32. It's March 16th. We're in the Crow Wing County Historic Courthouse. And let's call to order the City Council, Brainerd City Council meeting. We'll start with roll call.
Bevins.
Here.
Badeau.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Lambert.
Here.
Stunek.
Present.
Pritchett.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Menk.
Present.
Present. Let's stand for the pledge. Okay, that brings us to the next item, which is the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Bevins.
I'd like to offer a couple of changes to the agenda. I would like to take item 9D, which is the fire suppression discussion, and move it to personal and finance agenda item number 6. And I'd like to replace it on the main agenda with the corona virus COVID-19 discussion and recommendation. And I remove that, or I move that agenda amendment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the two changes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up on the agenda is the consent calendar. Notice to public, all matters listed are considered routine by the council and will all be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Bevins.
I would like to move a consent calendar amendment to remove item 5E, which is the lawful gambling application submitted by the Dark Horse Anglers at their request. And I would move adoption of the amended consent calendar by roll call.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar with one amendment of removing 5E at the request of the organization. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Bevins.
Yes.
Badeau.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. Next up is 6, presentations. 6A, presentation from Brainerd Community Action.
State your name and your address.
Yeah. Name and address for the record.
Dave Badeau, 823 12th Avenue Northeast. Executive Director of Brainerd Community Action, newly selected director. You guys obviously know me, moving from that chair to here, but we wanted to get in front of you guys and talk to you real quick about Brainerd Community Action. Most of you know who we are and what we do, and we apologize for the delay in getting here. We'd like to be here earlier in the year, obviously, but we are going through the selection process for the director position. So, a lot of people know, obviously, Brainerd Community Action for the 4th of July and for the Arts and the Parks events. Actually, just was at a conference in which an individual said that your nonprofit organization will be known by the events that you put on, and that cannot be more true of our organization. We are the 4th of July group, but that's not really who we are. The Brainerd Community Action is a nonprofit organization that focuses on helping individuals and groups who have a desire to help others but may not know where to get started. So really what we are is that bridge that helps people that are looking to help their community but maybe don't know exactly where to get started. We have a lot of services, including step-by-step instructions on nonprofit creation, the help and applying for grants, accounting and financial management, and then fiscal sponsorship is one of the biggest things that we do. And most people don't know what fiscal sponsorship means. And what it is let's say you have a group and you're looking to raise some money for a cause, or maybe you're looking to create a nonprofit but you don't know where to get started and are needing someone to hold the funds in a tax and not a charitable tax-exempt status. And that's basically what we do. So we have, right now, I believe 18 different fiduciaries, and that number changes pretty often because what we try to do is help groups as they need them, but then as they don't, they can move on. And what we do is we take in those funds and we help the accounting services for them so that they can continue to do their work. And then as they need to kind of grow, we're there to help them grow and then connect them with other members of the community. Any questions of me?
Any questions?
Just a comment, more garbage trucks in the parade.
Good floats.
Done.
Well, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Note taken.
That brings us to the next item on the agenda. Number 7, council committee reports. 7A, we'll start with Safety and Public Works Committee. Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 5 agenda items. First up is item number 1. Funny how that works. Resolution concurring with the revocation of segments of County State Aid Highway 20 in the city of Brainerd. The motion is to accept staff's recommendations adopting the attached resolution, which concurs with the county's resolution in which revokes County State Aid Highway 20 from Washington Street to Beaver Dam from a County State Aid Highway and makes it a municipal state aid street, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, thank you. This just does the official concurrence or agreement with the county's petition to the state. Now, there is going to be a second agreement which will come in hopefully at the next council meeting with the particulars of the agreement that we agreed upon regarding that transference from county to city. But this part has to be done so the state knows that we agree that with the county that we want to accept responsibility for this street.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. It's a resolution. We'll vote by roll call.
Bevins?
Yes.
Badot?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Lambert?
Yes.
Stunek?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next up is item number 2, which is a resolution supporting infrastructure accountability. I'd like to make the motion, and then I'll explain what it is. The motion is to accept staff's recommendation and adopt the attached resolution in support of infrastructure accountability, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, what this does simply is something that I can't believe isn't allowed now by the state of Minnesota. But if we have a developer that wishes to have a development that impacts some of our infrastructure, such as a large housing development that might require additional road improvements to an existing road or different traffic considerations on an existing intersection. A good example, the one we discussed in committee, would be like if the Northtown addition suddenly exploded in development and we ended up having traffic issues at the intersection of Beaver Dam and Riverside. There might be some traffic controls that are needed, and at this point we have no legal right to charge the developer for those improvements. We can either accept or deny it ourselves. And this has recently happened in another community in the state of Minnesota. So this resolution would allow us to set up a fee structure to charge the developer for those additional improvements. There's some other particulars as far as we have to set up an account for that improvement, and those fees have to go into that improvement. I presume that's an accountability thing. But that's primarily what this does, and I believe it is by the League of Minnesota Cities, the legislation.
Okay, any discussion? Any questions or comments on it? Seeing none, we'll vote on the resolution by roll call.
Bevins?
Yes.
Badot?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Lambert?
Yes.
Stunek?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 3, the Transit Express route. The motion is to accept the recommendation and elimination of the express service route and to use the service hours as additional dial ride hours in concurrence with the Transportation Advisory Committee's unanimous recommendation, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, we tried it. Ridership was actually higher than what I thought it would be on this express route, but we still lost $7,000 and in the most recent year. So it just makes sense. And more people are wanting the curb-to-curb service that Telluride offers, so.
All right, I have a question, and maybe Jan, you can answer. We never put out like benches or signs, like informing the public that a bus route exists. The committee consider doing that before just canceling the route?
We did. And with the fact that the expense, we're losing $7,000 a year, and then we have the expense of all that, we just thought it wouldn't be the best thing to do. But we did, and that's something I had brought up through the years, so. And it just didn't get done, so.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 4 is tax forfeit non-conservation parcels. We have 6 parcels in question, and the motion is to accept staff's recommendation in agreement with Crow Wing County's non-conservation status of these parcels so that the land may be placed on the Crow Wing County land sale, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just as an FYI, if you noticed, one of the 6 is the downtown motel, which does have a significant assessment against it, what we all agreed to, removing that blighted property or structures.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our final item is item number 5, which is the 2020 downtown landscaping and maintenance agreement. The motion is to authorize staff to distribute the request for quote for downtown landscaping services. And that's the first part of the same motion. And the second part is to also authorize staff to develop, post, and conduct the hiring process for a part-time downtown maintenance position to be paid for through the budgeted funds for the planning intern position. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you explain it?
I'll explain how this works. So traditionally, we've been hiring a landscape company to plant and maintain and clean and dump garbage and take care of all kinds of streetscape maintenance items in the downtown area. But we also have a $7,600 budgeted for a planning intern. So Mr. Chansky, through circumstances in the planning department, is unable to use this intern, but rather than forfeit the position, the time and the money, it makes perfect opportunity to put that $7,600 into an intern, but a downtown maintenance and streetscape intern primarily under his area, and hopefully then reduce the amount of money that's assessed to the downtown businesses by only going out for quote for the startup of planting and preparing the beds, et cetera. That would hopefully reduce the $12,000 assessment and be able to potentially do a better job. That I don't know. I mean, there was really no complaints last year about Northwoods, so they've done a good job, but this would reduce the assessment and still maintain the planning position's budgeted amount.
So in a sense, we are removing money from the downtown special service district tax levy and putting it in the general levy on all of the taxpayers in the city of Brainerd to maintain some flowers downtown.
I would say no, because that $7,600 is actually, yes, you are correct, but we're not putting any additional money on the taxpayers.
No, but it's $7,600 of levy dollars. It's not coming out of the special service district.
Correct.
But it's to service the special service district.
Yep, exactly.
So perhaps I think I am in favor of this, to try this for 1 year.
Yes.
But perhaps in future years, we'd look at different funding mechanisms than just general levy dollars. Perhaps it goes on the special assessment.
Correct, perhaps.
Or
that was-
perhaps the downtown business council can fundraise to pay for the, or something, because we don't go to Kelly's Service on Washington Street and plant a bunch of flowers and maintain them for you. We don't do it in
Right.
other commercial districts, I don't
I
know.
understand. The council has traditionally placed effort into supporting downtown. So,
And I absolutely think it's worth it for 1 year, but I don't think it's wise to put it in the budget and just do this forever.
It's something we could probably review next year. And I'd say with the circumstances, with COVID-19, any relief that we can possibly garner for our businesses, be it downtown or others, I think we definitely explore.
the other portion of this, Mr. Chair, is that when the bids come back from the proposers, the people who respond, that'll come back to us, because we don't know what that'll be. Significant reduction? We hope so, but we don't know.
Dave?
Yeah, that would be, I agree with what Gabe is saying as well. However, it does make me a little leery that we have a program currently in place and that we're taking away from that program, and then we're going to try and revisit it again if it fails. But I do like the idea of perhaps giving that a shot for 1 year. It does make me leery, though, that, if you've got something in place and you haven't had complaints, then all of a sudden you're shifting everything around. Who's to say that when we go back next year, it doesn't cost them more money? But, if we've got the ability this year to give it a shot, I'm okay with that.
I guess my question, and I know I questioned Dave, I thought we were still going to be assessing the downtown for this, aren't we?
For the flowers,
Flowers
not
only.
for the maintenance. So
Oh,
right
for-
now, we assess for the flowers and maintenance.
Okay, okay.
What this
I'm
change
sorry.
is gonna be is we're gonna assess the property owners downtown for
the
the
flowers
flowers.
only.
And then we're gonna make people in Northtown and South Brainerd and every other neighborhood pay for the maintenance of the flowers.
Which is the part that I find a little perhaps misguided in the future.
That's an argument that goes back to the downtown street assessment, which was one of two projects we've done since I've been on the council that we did not follow our very own assessment policy, Buffalo Hills being the other one.
So maybe they can pay for some
Well,
flowers.
if you want to get into that argument tonight, Mr. Chair, I'm all for it, but we have this every EDA with all the state funding that goes towards downtowns, but nothing 60 feet away. So, but I don't want to do that tonight.
Any
we
other
don't
discussion?
have enough time.
On this motion? No, all right. Then we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
End of report.
Thank you, Alderman Bevins. That brings us to 7B, Personnel and Finance Committee, Alderman Bedeau.
All right, we have 6 items on our agenda, including the item that was added previously. First item is the approval of bills, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the payment of the bills. Any discussion?
The discussion would be that you may notice that our reports look different because we have new software. So if you had any questions as to why they're different, that's why.
How do you like it?
So far, so good. The reporting's a little overwhelming. There's so many options, but we're working towards that.
All right, any other discussion?
They worked good so far.
Mr. Chair, I say this a couple times a year, I liked having those reports part of this packet. Yeah, I don't like it like now where it's not, where I have to go to an email that came separately, 3 days differently. Well, sometimes the packets come 3 times because they're revised, and I get that, but it would be nice if the financial reports were in it like they once were, so I could just scroll through one document.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
our apologies. This BSNA software conversion has been really consuming for the majority of our staff. They were here for 2 weeks, and our finance staff was literally in training from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. So I know Connie came in over the weekend and prepared those financial reports. There was a lot to learn, so our apologies for the delay in that.
Well, that's okay, it would be nice if it was in the packet.
Agreed.
So perhaps something we can work towards with the
Yeah.
new software is hopefully it saves you some time eventually down the road, right?
Usually the accounts payable reports are submitted when we submit the packet. They're just not included in the packet, just because they were so many pages as well, because they were broke out by fund. Now it's broke out by vendor, so it seems to be less number of pages. So maybe we could look at adding it back in. I would wonder why we took it out of the packet in the first place, would be something I would want to research, but otherwise, yes, we can look at that.
And now that
Paper
we're
anyway.
paperless, yeah. I could see having 70 pages of bills in the middle of the packet, confusing in a paper packet, but paperless.
I would just question of why we removed it in the first place, to research why we removed it, what the reason was.
Oh, well, let's look into that.
Save those E-trees.
Save the PDFs. Any other discussion on the bills? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Bevins.
Yes.
Badot.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes, motion carries.
All right, item number 2 is the request to apply for grant.
Oh, Connie?
Oh, I
Can I
apologize.
just make one question too? At committee level, we discussed whether the prepaids, though, the bills that we have to write in between council meetings because of due dates or what have you, the committee allowed us to include those payments in with just the regular AP run, so you won't have a separate report anymore, as long as that's okay with the full council as well.
That seems fine. Trust the Personnel and Finance Committee.
Thank you for your trust.
Well,
All right, item number 2 is the request to apply for grant from Otto Bremer Trust. And the motion coming out of committee is to authorize the fire department to file for a grant through the Otto Bremer Trust for $300,000, and I so move.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to apply for a grant.
So this, you may remember, we applied for a FEMA grant as well just recently. We have not heard back on that. However, this is another grant that we're looking to try and use as well for the self-contained breathing apparatus units. If we are to receive both, we will more than likely decline one, but we wanted to go out for as many grants as we could possibly get, to cover our bases.
All right, any questions, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, item number 3 is the police sergeant promotion. And the motion coming out of committee is to approve promoting Officer Derek Palanche to police sergeant effective April 13th, and that his wage be set at step 3 of the rate, the Teamster labor agreement, at a rate of $35.67 per hour, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So this is to cover the retirement in the department, which will be taking place on April 26th. So there'll be about a 2-week overlap in time for some cross-training. What did come up downstairs is that at step 1, Derek would actually be receiving a small decrease in pay, which is not allowed by our policy. So we were required to move him to step 2.
Okay.
Would you have step
Step 3, I'm sorry, am I reading that wrong? So I'm sorry, step 2 was a decrease. We're moving him to step 3.
Do I hear a 4?
Could do that.
I believe the
Kevin, you
motion
don't-
said 3. I misspoke.
Yep. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, the next item is the appointment of the building official. There will be 2 motions here. The first of which is the appointment of Darren Deseth as building official at step 2 of the building official pay scale, which is $31.11 per hour, effective March 17th, 2020, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
We did have some discussion downstairs. There were 5 applicants that applied for the position. Of those applicants, the only one with a certified official with the state, a certified building official with the state, was Mr. Deseth. So, and that is a minimum requirement that we have for the position. So he was the only one that met the minimum requirements for the position.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
The second motion is to authorize staff to post the building inspector position and conduct a hiring process, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right, item number 5 is the DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant Request. The motion coming out of committee is to authorize staff to submit the DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant application pending park board approval, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
We're probably going to have a little bit of discussion on this one. The first and foremost, on the agenda, at least the one I'm looking at, it lists the total as being $236,338. That number is incorrect. The very next page down, you will see at the very top, a total of $248,623. That is the correct amount on the grant. However, the amount that we receive could be anywhere from $10,000 to that amount. However, I just wanted to make sure that you're noticing that correction there. The secondary discussion that we had downstairs was about whether or not, two things. One, we have this as pending park board approval. The park board has not approved this officially, and the discussion was had down there of, is that the process we would like to have? Do we want it to come here? Because in order for them to actually apply for the grant, that we need to approve it, or do we want them to approve it at their park board meetings first? In this instance, it needs to be done by the 27th, so the process was done in this manner, but we would like a little bit of clarification going forward.
Well, I have an opinion, and I think the city charter is pretty clear that the park board handles the parks. So if they want to apply for a grant, they're more than welcome to. And I don't think they need to get approval from the city council. We authorize their budget at the end of the year, and if they do have money in their budget that they're going to try and apply for grants with, that would be a park board prerogative and not really up to the city. That's how I read the charter. Connie?
I do believe why we felt it needed to come before council is because there's a city policy that if you're applying for a grant over $5,000, that it gets council approval. So that's why we brought it to the city council.
Right. I know I had that conversation with Jennifer last week, and I just think if you read the city charter, the park board is kind of a separate entity that has control over the parks, just in the same way the Public Utility Commission. And they apply for grants without asking us for our so smart opinions on what grants they should apply for, and I don't think it's a problem. I think they know what they're doing, and our park board should also know what they're doing. Kelly?
Mr. Chair, I don't see a contradiction. I think often procedurally, who gets to it first, it can be a matter of semantics as well as timing. This particular time, it worked out this way. I would feel somewhat uncomfortable applying for a grant without at least Mr. Saylor and the park board knowing about it, because we might find that we're applying for a grant that they don't want. When I heard from our park liaison, after months of discussion on the Memorial parking lot, that it's possible that the park board did not want us to buy it, oh, what a shock. I mean, so somewhere along the line, I think we both need to look at these issues. And in what order, sometimes that'll just be based on who meets first. But I don't see a contradiction on the fact that we both look at them. And I don't see that as contradicting the charter. I understand the charter says that we will approve or not the budget, but we also have this policy, and this particular grant is not part of that budget that we approved. So the fact that it comes to both of us, I think is a good thing. Again, I would be a little surprised to find out now if the park board said, what are you guys doing applying for this grant? Right? Like Mr. Bordeaux suggested, what are you guys doing buying the Memorial parking lot? Right, that was a head scratcher, Chief. I was somewhat shocked to hear that at the last meeting. So anyway, regardless, I think it's okay.
Mr. Chair? Yep. I just remember, if I remember correctly, the reason for this is sometimes you apply for a grant and that basically you're committing to what might be larger sums of money, matches and stuff, and it was just to kind of keep those in front of the city council, for good or for ill.
Yeah, personally, I think this is a great opportunity for the park board to start looking at grants. I think it's a great thing that they should be doing. We allow money, And then to take that money and apply it to matching funds for grants sounds like a fantastic idea to me. But we just wanted to make sure there was clarification on that. The other thing too is that we did cap.
If I can interrupt, Alderman Bedeau, are we clarifying anything if the city council is the one applying for grants? And we're encouraging them to apply for grants, but we're the one making the decision?
Currently, or on this particular one?
Well, this
are you speaking
particular
of?
one, this good start.
On this particular one, we are being asked by the park director if it is okay for them to apply for a grant. Now, technically, you are correct that they have not themselves said that they would like this grant. That is why this came up downstairs. The exact same question is, are we the one then deciding that this grant is what they want, or are they the one deciding that they want this grant? That was a little bit of clarification we were looking for, but I can understand that in this instance, if things are moving in a way, we both have to sign off on it. But I agree with you. That's why the question was arised downstairs.
Mr. Chair, may I ask Dave a question? The fact that it's due the 27th of March, when was the board meet next?
They will meet next Tuesday, which is the 24th, I believe.
Okay,
Yep.
so is that another reason why it was kind of?
Yes, yeah, it's 100% why this is before us, before
Okay.
going to them.
So I think it'd be, especially the deadline, I think it's prudent to come in front of us to,
I-
at least we don't lose the money.
Sure.
Or the opportunity, I should say.
I just want to make sure that we have clarification in the process. Because I don't want to tell them that they need to do things that they don't want to do.
Jennifer?
And Mr. Chair, members of the council, I think the other thing that staff would really like is some direction on this as well. This grant application is being submitted on behalf of the city of Brainerd. And as Connie mentioned, the policy requires that staff bring something before the council for authorization. We recognize, and as you mentioned, we had a discussion about that last week. But how would the council like us to handle this if it is being for a park by the park board, but in the name of the city of Brainerd? So I don't know if that's a topic for tonight, but I would say that staff would like direction on that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
But, Mr. Chair, wouldn't it make sense if there wasn't a issue about deadline, that it would go to the park board first? I mean, if there was not an issue about a timeliness, that it should go to the park board first? I mean, that's what we're,
Absolutely, and,
Yeah.
and this isn't a grant opportunity that just appeared for the first time in history last week. It's a long-standing opportunity that's existed, so it's kind of a manufactured timeline crunch, right? We could have applied for it 3 months ago, 6 months ago.
that it-
But yeah, I think if
Yeah, I mean,
things
that's-
were applied for in a timely fashion, it would go to the park board first and then to the city council, because apparently it seems like the consensus here is that we do want to have oversight over what BPU and the park board are applying for. Any other discussion?
So the one other question that did arise downstairs is that because we created the project in which the way we did, the way that we worded the funding, it was that the project had a cap of 1.3 million. Is this then applied over top of that, or is this then reduced from that? That did come up downstairs. We did not make a decision on that. I believe that the feeling downstairs was that they should be allowed to go find additional funds if needed. And in this instance, that's, I believe, what they're asking for. But I think we should clarify that so that we don't get done with this process and then go, well, wait a minute, that's our money. You know, so I just want to make sure that we're being clear in this, that it is, that they are having the ability to get additional funds on top of what we had budgeted for it.
Okay, we could handle that with a motion after we settle the current motion on the floor to direct the park board to apply for this grant if they want to.
Mr. Chair, are we ready for a motion?
We have the motion, we're done debating. The motion is to authorize the application of the grant pending park board approval. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Alderman Bedeau, you had another motion you wanted to make?
So I would like to make the motion that the funds received from this would be in addition to the allotment of the $1.3 million. And that's-
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to add whatever funds, if any, received, added to the $1.3 million allotment for the Memorial Park project. And a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, and with all that discussion, my computer is going to sleep on me. All right, the last item, which was the additional item, is the police department remodel server room suppression. And the motion coming out of committee is to authorize staff in the amount of $18,700 to install a clean agent system rather than a water-based sprinkler in the server room to minimize disruption to the city's network, especially in the case of a false alarm or fire in another room, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So we got about $150,000 worth of equipment in this room that we do not want water going on. And this is.
We should get insurance on it. Could work.
Could work. Could work. However, the motion is that we install a clean agent system, which would protect the equipment in the case of a fire.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
End of report.
Thank you, Alderman Bedeau. That brings us to unfinished business. That is 8A, call for applicants. Mayor Menk.
Good evening. We're looking for a lot of applicants for a number of positions with the city. All these positions will expire on December 31st of the year that I say. On Cable TV Advisory Committee, we need 2 terms expiring 2021, 2 terms expiring 2022. The Charter Commission, 2 terms expiring 2020, 1 term expiring 2021, 1 term expiring 2022, and 1 term expiring 2023. Then on EDA, it's a little different because of the date of EDA starting. It'll be 9/7 of the said year. Right now, we have 1 term available at 2020, and that'll be it. And Gabe Johnson, you can start out with yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one recommendation, one position to fill with a recommendation, and it is a seat on our Planning and Zoning Commission. It is a term expiring end of year 2022. Please fill out your application at City Hall. Well, maybe not. You fill it out online and mail it to City Hall. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're also always looking for people for the Water Tower Committee. That brings us to 8B, City Hall and Police Department remodel update.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. I have Kevin Keary here tonight to kind of give us a quick budget update on how the City Hall and Police Department remodel projects are going. So with that, Kevin.
Good evening, Council. Kevin Curry with Contegrity Group. In your package, you received a 2-page report. The first page is a summary of where we started with the approval process for the project. The attachment is the detailed budget for both projects, the City Hall and the Police Department. On page 1, you can see that for the approved scope, the council previously approved funding up to $2,392,575. After the bids were received and the quotes were received for both projects, the budget was $2,170,803 for a difference of $221,722 to the good. Item 3, you can see there that currently our contractor change order total is $1,313, or roughly 0.1% of the total budget for the contractors.
We just added 18,000 to that like a minute ago, didn't we?
Item B is the current change order total for the owner items. They're identified on the second page. That's 1.6% of the total budget, or $33,666, for a total change orders to date of $35,179. That leaves us a current contingency balance of $219,348. Contingency combined with the spread between the approved funding and the budgeted total is $441,120. So that's an overall summary of where we started and where we are. Page 2 has the detailed breakdowns for each contractor, for each project, and then it also breaks down the owner items. I won't go through those in detail. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
I have one question, just how's the timeline looking and going as expected on the projects?
Yeah, we're currently, a week from today, staff will be occupying the second floor. It'll be completed. We'll then move up to third floor and start that work. It's roughly running about a month, 4 to 5 weeks to do a floor. I would anticipate that this would probably be the case. However, after we move people into third floor, we have to take, the next step is to take the boiler offline. And when we do that, we will have no heating capacity in the building. So we're going to wait until the heating season is nearing its end before we do that. And at that point, we'll be moving the equipment into the penthouse, the new equipment for mechanical. And we'll take a boiler offline, we'll put all that back together, we'll redo the roof at the same time. And so June-ish, July-ish, we'll be wrapping up that project, so.
All right. And then the street garage project, are we getting bid docs for that? Did we go out for bid on that one?
That's not in my scope at the moment.
That wasn't?
I mean, it might be coming up, and
Yeah,
the
it might
architect
be
may be
coming up, so
working
it's
on
not,
that.
it's not
but-
something we've done yet, obviously.
If I may, Mr. President, the architects have yet to start developing those plans or specifications yet. And so I think that kind of conversation we'll be having when we start wrapping up these other two. Obviously, we've kind of agreed that an expansion to that facility is kind of the direction we need to go, but where it goes and what that looks like is kind of yet to be seen, so.
Okay, so that's not in Contagrity's
Yeah,
wheelhouse.
yeah, they're not on board yet. WSN would be the party we would have to work with on that one, so.
Okay, well, this looks great. Does anybody else have any other questions, Tad?
Yeah, I got a quick question. So the very last line in the detailed sheet, fire suppression police, is that same figure we just approved, 18,700? Is that actually built into that then, already?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's already
Well,
built
that
in?
was a change that was added under the owner items. But
Thank you.
yes, it's in.
So it's
these-
already reflected
it's
in the
these
summary
totals,
sheet?
Yes. I will say that on the police department side of the project, we're scheduled to start that work on the 30th of March. We're going to meet on the 23rd to confirm that start date. And I've advised the city that based on the preliminary information that I've gotten from contractors, we would be relocating the server for the city on April 18th, give or take a day or two. So we're starting to, like I said, on our meeting on the 23rd with all the contractors, we'll kind of get buy-in that we're ready to start on the 30th, and we'll proceed on that basis. There's been a little bit of a hiccup getting people through the approval process for the background checks, et cetera. Several of the companies didn't realize what they needed to do, both company and personnel-wise, and we're playing catch-up there. But we set a deadline that we'll start the project on the 30th, whether they're ready or not, and we'll have to perhaps provide supervision for any contractor that doesn't have that background check completed at their cost.
Okay. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just harken back to an email received from a local businessman that they were enthusiastic that we could use as many local contractors as possible, and I find it very heartening that we were able to use. I see a lot of local contractors on this list, and we didn't know that was something you handled, but I was happy to see that there was a lot of money being spent locally here in this on both these facilities.
It's always good for the projects, not only for them, but it's also good for the owners, the city, because those people have a vested interest in the results. So they want to do good work, and they want to keep the relationship with the city on good terms. So it's a two-way street as far as having local contractors do work.
Anything else? Thanks for the update. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, the Shared Services Maintenance Agreement with Crow Wing County Update Dash Informational. City Engineer Sandy.
I gotta log back in. Give me 1 second, Mr. President.
Well, you submitted it for the presenter as Finance Director Hillman and Administrator Bergman.
Well, we, at one point, we thought this would go on PNF, but then we decided to put it on the full agenda since this is more of a, an item that was previously approved. At the request of Alderman Johnson, I put this on the agenda here tonight to kind of go over how this whole process started with our shared services agreement, our maintenance agreement with Crow Wing County, kind of how the first year went, and what we looked at here for the 2020 year. So as we kind of started putting this agreement together, I was working with Reed Thesey, who was the facilities manager at Crow Wing County. We started these conversations back early in, or I should say later in 2018, about the possibility of the city utilizing county personnel to provide maintenance at city facilities. The reason being is that they have a lot of professional personnel that are able to perform duties such as HVAC technician work, electrical work, general maintenance like your sheetrock repair, changing light bulbs, all that was included as part of this agreement. And I realized after I put this together that I didn't include the agreement in here, and I apologize because I said I did. But the existing agreement basically covered the whole gamut of facilities maintenance that would need to be performed on city facilities at the police department, fire department, city hall. So when we got the agreement approved by the council back in the budgeting process for 2019, the original agreement amount was $120,000, and that was based upon 2,080 hours of service time from the county maintenance staff, some administrative setup time from their administrative assistant and Reed and their lead worker, which included going through all the service manuals, all the buildings, and getting the assets from each building imported into their system so that we had an accurate view of what we had for equipment and things in these three buildings. So that once the agreement got signed, we had kind of a slow start. We didn't really get a lot of work orders going into the system until it was a lot of snow removal right at the beginning of 2019. We finally got assets and things imported, and they started doing PM work on our units, HVAC especially, at City Hall, Fire, and Police. At the time that this was all going on, obviously, we were in plan development process for both City Hall and the Police Department for HVAC repairs and replacements. So we kind of knew that going into it that we didn't necessarily want to put a whole lot of money into the system just from the fact that we weren't exactly sure if this stuff would be existing in the next few months. So basically, we got the agreement put into place. We thought it was a very good year. We have good feedback from department heads that had to deal with these issues before. You can kind of read through the memo. The real question mark is, we came to the end of 2019 and we were tracking under hours, and at the end of 2019 it came down to we were at 1,200 hours of service time that we actually used through work orders. That time is a little bit skewed just because that is the time that we actually put into work orders. There was a lot of administrative time at the beginning of this that we spent going through manuals and making sure assets were imported correctly into their system. And then once again, with the City Hall facility really being in remodel mode for the last 6 months here, we haven't done a lot of work in there from a Crow Wing County standpoint. We have gotten into having Crow Wing County do some work for us, utilizing our hours, such as moving some outlets, adding additional outlets in City Hall that were not in the plan to help accommodate different screen moving and things like that. So we have utilized some of those hours as part of our construction project. So I did have a conversation recently with the Crow Wing County, both new facility director and administrative services director, about where this agreement was, where should we go moving forward Obviously, we were underutilized on hours in 2019, and we knew going into this agreement that this has to continue to be mutually beneficial to both parties. And when we use 1,200 hours out of 2,080, it looks as though that we overestimated on the number of hours that we should have had for 2019. It was kind of a shot in the dark to begin with, and we really aren't going to have a good picture of that, once again, because we're not really working on city facilities right now, being that there's remodel projects going on. What the conclusion we came to is that both entities had budgeted for this item back in 2019 for the 2020 year, that we would really need to take a deep look at what the hour total should be in 2020 for 2021 if the city wanted to continue with this agreement. We would really need to take a deep dive in what we think that total should be once we get new facilities. And if it's beneficial for us to move forward with the agreement, or if it's beneficial for us to move in a different direction in the future, besides using county maintenance staff to perform maintenance on our facilities. So that's kind of where we're at. I guess I'll answer any questions from the council if you have them right now.
Any questions?
Am I reading this, Mr. Chair, am I reading this right, that we added the library to this contract?
Yeah, thank you, Alderwoman Lambert, for bringing that up. As part of trying to utilize some excess hours that we've had previously, the library had some issues with their control system at the library recently. That led into more of a deeper discussion about the controls upgrades that are happening at City Hall, the fire department, and the police department here coming up. And recognizing that the library is a city maintenance responsibility, we did recommend to the library and the library board that they stay consistent with our control system so that we are able to integrate them into our campus-wide control system just for simplicity purposes, so that if we do continue with Crow Wing County or we go a different direction, that consistency is there for all of our controls. Through that conversation that we had with them, to utilize some extra hours, we're like, hey, maybe the library wants to join on the maintenance contract, get on their work order system, get the assets imported into the system, and start utilizing the same work order system that we do with Crow Wing County. They're right there behind Land Services right here, kind of the same geographical area, and recoup some of those costs that way also. So yes, the library was added on to the contract as a separate building that we are, the Crow Wing County is servicing at this time. So, or it will be April 1st, I'm sorry.
You good?
But thank you.
So on the library part, we pay $100 an hour for the snow removal and light bulb changing and all of the maintenance that the county does for us. Roughly, right? We have 1,200 hours for $120,000. It's smart to bring the library in and have them offset our costs a little bit. I think that's a good idea. But at $7,500, are we limiting them to 75 hours of work?
No, I think the agreement was that we don't know what their workload's going to be yet. And so that if we do continue with Crow Wing County into 2021, we would look at how many hours the library utilized during the 2020 season, and we still don't know what our hour total is going to be for our campus. And
We're just putting the risk on the taxpayers of Brainerd for the library, since they don't know.
We don't know, and we don't know where our campus is going to be either,
Yep.
in my opinion. I mean, it was a shot in the dark to begin with, and it's starting to come into light a little more, but I still think there's going to be some questions that we have to answer come the end of 2020 where we're going to need to be hour-wise, because it's still not going to be a very clear picture due to a lot of our facilities being under construction and maintenance activities not taking place. So I think that's the real question we're going to have to answer, and that those discussions we'll need to have in depth come June and July, when buildings get done and we get our hands on preventative maintenance on the new facility. So.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, but I think $7,500 is, I'm glad we're bringing on other buildings that make sense, that are near the county, and I think it's a good idea. I think $7,500 is a real small contribution, considering it'll be one of 4 buildings. So it may be as much as 25% of the work, and they're only paying less than,
right,
10% of
and if I may,
the cost of
Mr.
the
President,
contract.
the HVAC stuff as part of our agreement with Crow Wing County is not included on the library's contract at this time. Crow Wing County was not comfortable taking on another building's HVAC liabilities. And so that does come into play with that too, because a large portion of the maintenance contract is our HVAC and equipment maintenance. So the Crow Wing County agreed to bring on the library from a general maintenance, some minor electrical work, but the HVAC, they will consult with us as far as what control system and things, but as far as doing preventative maintenance work on that system, they weren't comfortable at this time taking on that additional work due to the change order they've had in their facilities group, so.
Okay, and perhaps you have a comment about the library?
Yeah, basically, when we looked at it as library board, kind of like looked at what the costs would be offsetting with the hours that we needed and the costs, and it kind of works out. And I know that we're incurring a little bit of extra cost with the HVAC that we're getting in line with the other city buildings compared to just repairing the old one. But that kind of seemed like, you know, throwing good money after bad and having it so you have people on staff that could deal with those problems. Should work out, so.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, and that was informational. Thank you, City Engineer Sandy. Brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the authorized letter of intent with the Region 5 Children's Museum. City Administrator Bergman.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the council, before you is the letter of intent with the Region 5 Children's Museum. As you know, the City Council authorized $20,000 in the 2020 budget to partner with the Region 5 Children's Museum to develop a master plan for Lum Park. The intent here is to have the city enter into a letter of intent with the Region 5 Children's Museum, really to outline the responsibilities of each entity. The LOI includes the cost sharing for the master plan, the establishment of a workforce, task force, a working group, focus groups, and community engagement. The city will contribute $20,000 for the master plan, with the Region 5 Children's Museum contributing $17,000 to the master plan. The Region 5 Children's Museum, however, in addition to the $17,000 towards the master plan, will be doing some additional community engagement, which they expect to be about $6,000. So when you look at the cost split, although the $20,000 that the city is contributing towards WSN, compared to the 17, there's also some additional costs that the Region 5 Children's Museum will be doing. Paul Drange from Sourcewell is here if you have any questions for either him or myself. But the motion that we're asking is to authorize the city administrator to enter into the letter of intent with the Region 5 Children's Museum. And Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions or a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
on the task force, I mean, we're looking at 9 to 11 members. What would be the, expectation of that? That seems like a lot of members, so.
Mr. Chair, Alderwoman Lambert, I think this will be discussed a little bit more in the next agenda item when we're talking about hiring WSN to do this, because that will be part of their job. But if you do look at we really wanted to make sure in the letter of intent that we were outlining who and what the breakdown would be for the task force, making sure that we had several members from the city of Brainerd and representing the city of Brainerd. So you see that 3 members would be from the Region 5 Children's Museum, and the balance would be representatives here from the city of Brainerd.
Okay.
Right, and yeah, it's 11 would be a big body, but like we had
Yeah.
talked about at our workshop, we could double dip and have
Yeah,
a park
okay.
board and city council members kind of
Okay.
together and get it
Okay.
down to fewer
Okay.
members, but we can handle that at a later time. Is there any other questions, or I'm ready to hear a motion?
Mr. Chair? Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, I will so move to submit the letter of intent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize city administrator to sign the letter of intent. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is authorized proposal with Seth Smith Knowlton for Lum Park Master Plan.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the council, now that you have agreed to enter into the letter of intent with the Region 5 Children's Museum, before you is a request to enter into a proposal with WSN, with Seth Smith Knowlton, for the Lum Park Master Plan. WSN did submit a proposal to the city of Brainerd to conduct the Lum master plan. As a part of this master plan, WSN will be doing a number of things, including creating a task force, again, which will consist between 9 and 11 people, including representatives from the City Council, the EDA, the Planning Commission, the Park Board, the Region 5 Children's Museum, and then in addition, community members. There will also be a working group that will convene to really help assist WSN with the recommendations that come out of the task force from a city's perspective. The master plan will be conducted through the end of 2020 in 3 separate phases: programming, preliminary design, and then final presentation of graphics and deliverables. In addition, as I mentioned before, the Region 5 Children's Museum will be conducting, actually what they're doing is they're conducting 20 community engagements throughout all of Region 5. However, they have committed to at least 5, a minimum of 5, being conducted right here in the city of Brainerd. There will be more information that will follow, and again, just to reiterate what I said last time, the cost of the master plan for WSN is $37,000, of which $20,000 the city would pay, and then $17,000 from the Children's Museum. As mentioned prior, the Region 5 Children's Museum will have additional costs in that community engagement. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer questions. And again, Paul Drange is here from Sourcewell.
This is essentially the same, it looks to me, the same proposal that we talked about at our workshop, that Mike and Ashley talked about there. I mean, substantially the same thing.
Correct.
Okay, any questions? Seeing no questions, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second to authorize the proposal with WSN for Lum Park Master Plan. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr.
Next up, thank you. Next up, 9C, Mississippi Landing Trailhead Concept Design Presentation. I can use my, not mine, it's the county's.
Thank you.
Is that
My
in this
laser
area?
pointer doesn't work on my screen. It disappears.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. So I am here tonight to present to you the final concept design of the Mississippi Landing Trailhead. The goal of this presentation is to get your take on this concept, kind of set the stage moving forward, and then share the end product of our partnership with the National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, which we've been working through. It was awarded in 2019 and extended in 2020. As you know, this process has been going on for a number of years, but over the last year through 2019 into 2020, this process really started to take shape, starting with getting that grant from the National Park Service to work with them. So as I said, this really is a concept plan and estimate, cost estimate, which we'll discuss at the end, is the end product of that service process. Starting in January, kicking off that partnership, working through schematic designs, proposals, plan refinement. This is not the first concept they've come up with. I think this is iteration number 5 or 6. Traveling poster that went throughout the community through CLC. It's been at the YMCA. It's been at Arts in the Park and other events as well. Conducted a community survey that was responded to by over 450 members of our community. In January, they conducted a stakeholder meeting, brought together a number of stakeholders throughout the community to discuss this process, and then made this presentation or a similar presentation to the park board back in February. And so now we are here today to discuss this with you. This plan is supported by the comprehensive plan that the council adopted in October. Mainly, there's 6 different goals and policies that we pulled out from the comprehensive plan that support this plan. One of the main ones is land use goal 3 that says support and invest in the incremental enhancements of quality life. 3 different policies under that goal include providing equitable access to parks, open spaces, and recreational opportunities, taking strides to become a pedestrian-friendly community, and to preserve our natural resources and community spaces, specifically the Mississippi River. We also have goals and policies out of the community character section of the comprehensive plan, park and recreation, natural resources as well. And again, these are all elements that we got throughout the comprehensive plan process from the community. These were things that the community said we want to invest in as a community, not just for our present residents as well as future residents. As you know, many of you know, the existing site, it's about 3 acres. Mostly, about 90% of it is owned by the city of Brainerd. One little section is owned by ISD 181. It's been used as a parking lot for the vast number of years. It's got a couple hundred feet of river frontage, and as many of you know, right now there really isn't any stormwater control. Any stormwater that comes off of that space goes right into the Mississippi River. So one of the things we're looking to do is try to improve our natural resources through this project as well. Brainerd, our trail connection, something we've been talking about throughout this process with you, is using this truly as a trailhead that connects you to wherever you want to go in the region, taking the Paul Bunyan all up to Midgey if you want, connecting it eventually to the Cuyuna Lake State Trail that'll get you all the way up to the Cuyuna Lakes Recreation Area. We've got another entity working on making that connection between the city of Brainerd and Crosby. I was even able to attend a meeting up in Crosby last week with an entity that they're looking at working are doing a regional, what they call interpretive center for the Mississippi River. This could be part of that regional interpretive center. And as we bring people into our region, that's a space where they can start and really experience the Mississippi River from this location. Again, as we've discussed before, many of the overview items in this, the trailhead, amphitheater, trails and pathways, canoe and kayak launch, outdoor classroom. We really want this to be a multi-use site, give you an opportunity to interact with the river, have direct access to the river. The river runs all the way through our community, and yet the vast majority of the general public do not have access to the river. If you want to access it right now from a public standpoint, your option is Lum Park at the bottom of Rice Lake, or Kiwanis Park. You have an access there, but it's really not a great access, especially if you're looking to launch a kayak or a canoe, because most of the time of the year it's really muddy and just not a great, it's not great visual, and it's just not an easy place to access the river. Trailhead, as we said, to connect. But one of the key features of this site that we do not have throughout our community would be that amphitheater. A space that we can hold community events, be it local concerts, have speakers, plays, a lot of different events can be used at an amphitheater. That's something our community absolutely does not have right now, that kind of community event space. Also is an outdoor classroom, again, allowing people of all ages to interact with the river in an educational setting. As you can see, we can zoom in different areas, the trailhead, designated area, let people know, signs, kiosks, this is where you are, this is where you can go, this is how you can get there. Elements, we have seating areas, bike fix-it stations, water fountains, kiosks, again, mapping stations, that includes recreational, as well as I would foresee economic as well. You know, downtown is only this far away. How do you get around? General wayfinding throughout the community, not just recreationally. Play area, and we'll get to shortly, I'll address the elephant in the room, the restroom. Again, amphitheater, music, different types of plays, public events at this area. It's mostly going to be grass seating, so options would be to dig naturally into that hillside that you have there, providing seating up to 150 to 200. One element that would be throughout this site is it would be completely ADA accessible. Pathways and trails throughout, providing plenty of green space. It's flexible for people to interact with. If you want to have a picnic, you'll have plenty of green space. If you just want to walk around, go on your bike. We do have SEH working on the feasibility for the trail. You can kind of see that hash mark near the top. Feasibility for that trail to continue north from this all the way to 210 is the goal for that as well. I kind of spoke on the outdoor classroom, place to gather and learn, views of the river, structured. This would be more than just a pavilion, but actually geared around education. So providing spaces, maybe small tables for kids to gather around and do science projects or other types of projects, not just a general pavilion. It could be rented out like that, but we really want to gear it towards that educational aspect. Working with that to partner with entities such as CLC and ISD 181 and other educational groups throughout our community. Also, again, as mentioned before, we really want to integrate some stormwater retention, I would say retention, cleaning. Right now, as I said, anything that goes from that asphalt goes straight in the Mississippi River as it is. There's no filtration in that site. So the idea would be add some natural filtration, which would also clean up our area of the Mississippi River. Canoe kayak, again, as I said, providing a nice access to the Mississippi River, make it ADA accessible so all individuals in our community can access the Mississippi River. As you can see, in the future, in the right-of-way, doing some planning, allowing people to pull up, take their kayak off, have a soft space to put it, and then go park their vehicle before they launch onto the river. Throughout this process, I mentioned we did do a community survey. Some of the main items that came up as further items to discuss from the survey were restrooms, parking, maintenance, and signage. The restrooms we'll get to in just a moment. Parking, some people ask the question of where am I going to park? If we get rid of this parking lot, obviously there's less parking. There is current parking on East River Road. It's not the best. And if you're looking at doing an event at the amphitheater, that's 150 people where those people will post to park. Ashley Kaisershot with Sourcewell did do a general parking survey to figure out how many parking spots are within a 5 to 10 minute walk. Again, emphasizing walkability. And we estimate there roughly are 500 spots within about a 10-minute walk, anywhere from Kiwanis Park, some of the ISD 181 spots, the Justice Center parking lot, which the county has pretty much said those, outside of our service hours, that's a public lot. We have been in contact with ISD 181. I'll go into that a little bit as well. Maintenance, that's something that was discussed when we talked to the park board. It is something that we are looking furthermore into. What would this truly cost to maintain? This is, building this thing is only step one of this process. Then once we build it, by building it, we're taking on that we're going to maintain it. So we're looking at maintenance. What really would it cost to have all these elements, ongoing annual maintenance, as well as planning into 20, 30 years in the future when things need to start being replaced. And then again, signage, what do we want to be directing people to and how do we direct them to it around our community? There are a lot of benefits to this site. Main one just being health. Encouraging people to get out, be active, and be more healthy. Also, again, a gathering space for the community. Part of this whole process was really creating this as not just another park, but as a community space, a space that the community can come and gather together. Provide safer routes for bicyclists and pedestrians through the connections to the various trails, especially if we can get that further trail as a separate project between this site and Highway 210, and then again improving the riverfront and making it accessible to all. Okay. Back in, I really want to say it was October, November, the city council did agree to go in jointly with the Riverfront Committee for a cost estimate for this site. We contracted with SEH and they delivered us this estimate. This is a high-level concept estimate as the design, intricate design, each parcel or each piece has not been done. It's going to give us a range and kind of a median for each one. As you'll see, number 2 is a restroom. This is something that came up in Park Board and something that the committee has discussed in length. This restroom was kind of that wish item. We're looking at a restroom. Yes, we know that there is a restroom right across the street at the ball fields. We actually, myself and City Administrator Bergman, met with ISD 181 Superintendent Lane Larson and Facilities Director Reed TC last Monday to discuss that. Just reopen discussions of how can the city, the Riverfront Committee, and ISD 181 partner on this project. One of those items being the restrooms. So that is a discussion that we kind of reopened that discussion, and it's an ongoing discussion. If we don't have to have two bathrooms right across the street from another, let's save that money. How can we, as two entities that have an interest in this park, work together? So that is something that we are working towards. We just want to get it on there and figure out what would it cost if we were to have this is a 4-season bathroom on this site.
Question.
Yes, Mr.
David.
President.
I mean, $700,000. You could probably build like a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom home for $700,000.
So I think some of these items that were taken into account, and we have a further spreadsheet that really breaks down each of these items, is one, unlike, for example, the warming house we just built in Gregory Park, there's nothing there right now. So you would really be going the ground up. We asked them to do the 4-season. I think in their recommendation, their assumptions, they were assuming, I think, a family bathroom, a male bathroom with 3 or 4 stalls, and a female bathroom with 3 or 4 stalls year round. And again, these are high-level numbers. If we were to actually design a bathroom and go into design, those numbers would absolutely change.
I'd get you one for $150.
Would that be
And again, if there's an opportunity to,
Bucket with a lid.
and if there's an opportunity to partner with ISD 181, we absolutely would like to pursue that avenue to reduce the costs for all, and not have redundant services when we don't need to have them. In total, we're looking at about $4.6 million. That includes roughly a 20% contingency. As you know, contingencies vary. Some use, say, 10%, some say 15, some say 20. They just went the conservative route here and said, we're going to say a 20% contingency. Estimated construction costs at 3.1, about $600,000 in design and planning, and then another roughly $800,000 in that contingency. So roughly $4.65 million is the high-end estimate for this project.
Another question, and this one for the city administrator. This park is right next to 162 units of public housing, and I know you have experience with public housing in HUD. Are there HUD programs or HUD dollars available to provide outdoor recreational opportunities nearby public housing?
You know, I think that's an excellent question, Mr. President, and I'd be happy to reach out to the HRA to see if there are any opportunities.
Yeah, because it is right next door, and it would be a great opportunity, or it would be a great asset for the residents who live there to have a park right next door.
So many possibilities for connectivity.
And there are a lot of ways that, again, we just want to see what could this cost. There's a lot of partnering opportunities. Myself and Minister Bergman also met with Carl Samp, who's the executive director of the Community Foundation, last Friday, and discussed potential partnering opportunities that he even knows about for potentially partnering with CLC for landscaping. Maybe their horticulture or floriculture department would like to partner as this being a living classroom. There's a lot of different opportunities that we would like to pursue throughout this, which kind of leads to the funding question. Throughout this process, the Riverfront Committee has really been adamant that they don't want to be coming to the council and saying, here's it is, $4.65 million, please. We want to pursue what are other avenues that we can for developing this site. A couple of those are things that the council has already approved. We'll be going after the Federal Recreational Trails Program, the Local Trail Connections Program, which one we've applied for, one's coming up. There's multiple different opportunities, potential transportation alternatives into the future. But the main one we're going to be focusing on this year, and Ashley's already started some of the drafting, and we're going to be focusing on over the next month, is really pushing really hard this year for LCCMR funding. And looking at and asking for a full $4 million funding from the LCCMR and see where that gets us. Does it get us potentially? They might see the value in this project and see all the work that's been gone into this and the connection, the value to this community and the region. Fund all $4 million of it. Maybe they come back and they say we'll give you $1 million. But we're going to go all in on LCCMR this year and see where that gets us and then move forward. Which one question that's been asked is phasing. Is this a phasable project? The answer first is yes. But kind of going to that LCCMR application, our first option is build it all at once. If the funding comes in, we can build it all at once. We want to build it all at once. One of the reasons we want to do that is because that's generally the cheapest option when you're doing something like this. If you can disturb everything once, best option. When it comes to the actual phasing of it, that's really going to be dependent on funding that's we received. As the funding comes in, we'll see where we're at, and then we go, okay, what can we do? We know now we only have 150,000, or we have $500,000 now, we have $1 million now. What can we do? What's the best way to fund that, to phase this? And it really will be determined by how that funding comes in over the next months and year or so. So at this point, I'll leave it here. What we really are looking from the council is just some feedback. Are we on the right track? Do you like this? And then some authorization, a motion to authorize staff to explore and pursue or continue to pursue funding opportunities for the design and construction of the Mississippi Landing Trailhead, knowing that as funding comes in and as we start going towards actual design and construction, both the park board and the city council will be involved in those actual design and construction processes.
2 questions. The city council updated our capital improvement plan, like we're going to put the on-street, we're already planning on putting the on-street parking onto East River Road, correct, Paul? I think we just did that in a relatively recent meeting in this room.
Yeah, the city council authorized my staff to work on, during the update of the capital improvement plan, the cost estimating portion of this. That typically happens when we go through our update in the fall, once our construction projects are kind of wrapping up, so.
What timeline are you looking at to be digging into East River Road again?
It was dug into back in, I don't know, at maybe 10 years ago, so not very long ago.
That's the picture from the project. Look at how fresh that pavement is.
Well, that's a seal coat, so that's not actually the project itself. Okay. That's just a fresh seal coat, but yeah, that pavement's not very
old. All
old.
our roads look that nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins. Yeah, I mean, that pavement's not that old, so my thought, so our staff hasn't had an opportunity to go out there. We're gonna do a little bit of light surveying and using the concept layouts, we would do some high-level estimating for that project and per council's direct and program that into the capital improvement plan for looking into, I don't know what year, I guess that's up for debate or up for council decision. We would be looking at the 2025 year at this next update. So we're used up 1 year, we got to add another year on the end. And so right now, but we can put that in anywhere depending on council decision, so.
And if LCCMR says 4 million, here's 7, you could hypothetically do this in a couple of years.
We can find lots of ways to spend $3 million.
4 bathrooms.
Have 4 bathrooms, have 4. Okay, anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to say, I really support this project. And there are 2 things that I really appreciate. One is the on-street parking. I think that's something that we've heard from the council on many occasions, that we want to try and utilize on-street parking as much as possible, because in the future, it saves us money because we are just maintaining the roads as opposed to maintaining separate surface parking. And I really appreciate that you did your due diligence to look at how many parking spaces are around there, because I'm not gonna lie, I counted those parking spaces around that area one time. And if you go around that whole loop there, where let's say the parade goes, we're talking 700 some parking spaces. It's unbelievable. And I don't think people realize that. That's not a gigantic loop that is unsurmountable on foot. But I appreciate that you took your due diligence on that. The second part is the bathrooms, because I will say that when this came before the park board, I was very vocal about the fact that one of the things we have been looking at on our end from the park board's perspective is just how expensive these things are and what kind of usage they get and such. You know, 2 warming houses are going to have been made here in the last, well, actually in a couple of years we will be at 2. Both of them are running us about, what are we at, Tony? About
Gregory was about
280?
38.
Yeah, 238 when we got done. We figured about that. and we're looking at probably a little bit more on the one for Memorial, but they're very expensive. They're very expensive, not just to put in, but then maintain as well, because you look at, in 25 years, we have to probably have major maintenance done on them. And as you can see on that, if you go back to your action page there, and I know you pointed that out previously, but it's literally directly across the road. There is a public restroom that is by another entity, and it's very important for us as a group to be making sure that we are connecting with the other groups around us, the county, the school district, so that we can perhaps use those facilities. That's a facility that obviously in the summertime probably isn't getting used a ton, and hopefully we could come to some kind of agreement where we could maintain that. Or one of the questions that arose was whether or not it's ADA compliant. That might be something where we can bring it up to code for them, maintain it in the summer.
We do believe it is ADA.
You do believe it is? Okay, well, that was something that was brought up, that question that whether or not it was. But the other part of that, though, too, is that you can't see in the picture that right at the bottom of the photo, there's another bathroom, and then a quarter of a mile down the trail, there's a third bathroom at Kiwanis. So just so that we're aware that we need to be making sure that when we're making these decisions, cost-wise, I'd like to make sure that the project gets moving and that we're making sure that we're looking at those little bits of dollars, because it's a huge number. Between that and the amphitheater, it's a huge portion of the budget. I'd like to see it happen. I'd like to see it all happen, but I'd for sure like to see something happen as opposed to being caught up on these dollar amounts, because that's a huge amount of money for people to use the bathroom. All right, are you finished?
Thank you, Dave. Are you?
I'm finished.
Yeah,
Are
I
you?
am. Anybody else have any comments, questions, Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bordeaux brought up, as did David Chansky, brought up parking. Just wanted to, because this has been an issue with Memorial Park, all of those parking spots, probably a large percentage of them, we don't control. So the partnerships with the other entities in the area will be critical. This parking lot that's removed, 99% of the time, there's nobody there. But during a football game, you can't get a spot in it. So those relationships with our partners and other people who have those parking lots will be critical. The other part of that, of course, is I hear Riverfront Committee and Park Board almost interchangeable during this presentation. And I'm a little bit concerned, especially after hearing that it's possible the Park Board may determine that the purchase of the Memorial Park parking lot is not in the best interest of the Park Board. At this point in the game, that surprises me. I would not want that to happen here. I have not read every minute of every meeting that the Park Board has put forth on this project. So I may be, but you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, when we brought this before the Park Board on February, was it 24th? In February, they did vote in favor of supporting this plan.
Perfect. I think that's important because, as we've discussed tonight, the relationship between the Park Board and the City Council is somewhat different than other entities. Two other things, and then one's a question. If you flip back to the very first picture, it shows the Three Bridges Trail in a completely different position than what I remember it. Goes all the way up to the dam. And I just want to say, is that a policy shift of the committee, or is that just a representation?
Which one was that?
Because I showed it, I remember it going south down by the water
this one right
treatment
here.
plant, and it goes all the way up actually to the cemetery.
So when the partnership plan was originally done and SEH originally kind of gave a concept to a plan, the idea was to go all the way
Yes.
from the dam all the way down.
Yes.
At this stage of the game, we are looking purely in what SEH has been hired to do on a feasibility study is strictly from this site to 210. So there is a potential, I think, long-term, there would be a future desire to extend it
Right.
all the way north, but it's not in the
Right.
near term.
And I've seen drawings that go south as well.
Correct.
So any line north of Washington Street is just an arbitrary line drawn on a map.
Yes, at
That's
this
what I
point.
thought this was, but I thought I better ask because, right?
There is a desire to eventually, but again, that's way, way down the road.
Okay, very last question. And it just goes with partnering, Splash Pad Water Park. Any thought of contacting those people? This seems like,
At this point, I don't believe there has been, but we can absolutely engage them and bring them into the
it
loop.
would seem like it possibly would be a fit. I have no idea where they're at. I know the park board has approved a position elsewhere in the city, but I've seen these before on riverfronts, and they're kind of cool. So just thought I would throw that out there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if I may just comment briefly on the park board end of things, I feel like I've seen this presentation like 75 times. So the park board have seen this and have seen it a lot and has made comments on it. The questions were a little bit of the bathroom, the maintenance of it is in terms of making sure that we're not just plopping something on their plate and saying, okay, take care of it again. That seems to be their concerns recently, which is a great concern. I'm glad that they're having those discussions. But those are the concerns that they've had, is just making sure that we're being mindful of what type of maintenance it's going to take, and then any structure that we build gets put onto their future budgets as well. So those are the main concerns they've had. But they've been great about bringing this before us. I swear it's 75 times, but I may be wrong. It may only be 14.
And I want to address those park board concerns again, and perhaps you can relay it at your next meeting. It is up to the park board to maintain the park properties. It is up to the park board to present a budget to the city council. The city council, as long as I've been around, has never taken a park board budget and said that is absolutely wrong, we're slashing it all. We have given them exactly what they have asked for every single year I have been around. If they need more money for maintenance, it would be incumbent on the park board to request the money to maintain the facilities that we all expect them to be maintaining with the money that we fund 100% every single time they ask. Perhaps you can relay that to me, liaison.
Would you or would you not prefer that they were having those discussions amongst themselves before presenting a budget to you, so that you can feel comfortable that the budget they've presented has taken that into account?
Yeah, I hope they would have conversations about their budget. But to think that they're going to be shortchanged when they are absolutely fully funded for every penny they ask for, they are not shortchanged. They're short of leadership, potentially.
I simply believe that they are trying to take a more diligent approach to the questions that you are presenting to them.
I love this plan, though. Back to this. I think you're on the right. I think the Riverfront Committee is in the right direction here. Does anybody else have comments on that?
I'll just reiterate my support for it. This has got, in terms of amenities and connectivity, fantastic. I'd maybe even add something potentially to the funding source list. In addition to the TA, I know maybe we could utilize the Safe Routes to School. I know not this year, but oftentimes the state has a separate source for safe routes. So I don't know if that's a possibility, but another potential funding source.
So the requested motion, David?
The corrected motion is authorizing staff to explore and pursue funding opportunities for the design and construction of the Mississippi Landing Trailhead.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
Second.
and a second to authorize staff to pursue funding within current city policies, like still bringing grant applications to the council?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. That brings us to the moment we've all been waiting for, 9D, and it is COVID-19 discussion and recommendations. Administrator Bergen.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the council, it has been a busy day. It's been a busy few days. I think internally, from a staff perspective, we have spent almost literally all day working on COVID-19, trying to come up with some recommendations for City Council as this continues to progress. If you haven't had the chance, I know the President was on this afternoon made some additional restrictions, recommendations. The governor also was on right at about supper time, just right before the city council meeting, with a recommendation to close bars and restaurants. We're in an ever-changing world, and internally we are trying to figure out what we as the city of Brainerd need to be doing and considering for the protection of our staff, our council, our residents, our community. I did hand out a memo with a couple of recommendations that we would like you to consider. So I think first and foremost is when we start talking about a limited exposure, we're hearing from the CDC that we should be, maintaining a safe distance, limiting our crowds. I know the president today has reduced that down to 10. That happened just shortly, or this afternoon. While most of our city services will continue to fully operate, we are recommending that we modify the way that we deliver our services. And consider closing our City Hall, Parks, Fire, Police, and Street Garage. I use the word closing lightly. Closing does not mean that we will not be providing city services at this time. It means that we will continue to provide city services.
So closing to the public.
Closing to the public. So really, still delivering services, or most of our services, but limiting the public exposure. And it might be one way that we can do. I know the city of Crosby, Golden Valley, Plymouth, and Duluth, at the last time I had checked, had all made decisions to, Mr. Chair.
And you and I had spoken about this at maybe 3:30 this afternoon, and the county was not closing, but as we walked in tonight, there is a sign on the door that the county is closed for walk-in traffic now too, so.
That's right.
Things are changing quickly.
And literally, I started writing this memo this morning. By the time I got done, it had completely changed. It's just so, watch the news, you see how drastically and quickly this is changing. So that would be one of our recommendations. Most of our residents can continue to do city business. We have online options, we have phone, we have email, we have snail mail, US mail, things like Park and Rec program registration. And as Parks Director Saylor informed me, we're not even quite ready to open those registrations yet. Building permits, licensing, bus tickets, dog licenses. Most of our services can be handled online, or just a short phone call or an email away to any city staff that is prepared to respond. So that would be one of our recommendations. Another one is we think about exposure not only to our staff but to our residents. Rental licensing inspections. It's a very important program, but at this point, it may be a good idea to suspend those until further notice, or unless we have an emergency. Of course, there is an emergency, we will be prepared to respond. That brings up our building inspections. Our recommendation is to continue to perform all building inspections as long as it is safe under the recommendations by the CDC. And again, those recommendations also continue to change. My guess is they've changed from the time this meeting started until now. Also, upon the recommendation of the CDC, we're recommending that the city cancel all special events effective immediately for the next 8 weeks. That is the recommendation of the CDC. I believe it was crowds of 50 that went down to 25, and now I believe I'm hearing 10.
Would you like a motion to direct staff to go review anything we've approved over the last few months? Or can you guys just handle that? Because we've approved events that are going to happen over the next 8 weeks that we no longer approve of happening.
Yes, and we would like the council to make a motion for us to reach back out to those based on CDC recommendations that those are being canceled, and we can, from a staff perspective.
Do you want that now, or do you have a few you're going to ask for when you're done presenting this memo?
I have several, and again, my apologies. I would normally bring a recommendation to you with motions, and again, I was literally writing this as I was running out the door.
I think we'll
Separate
wait till
motions
she's
or
done.
one motion?
I think there'll be separate motions, but we'll wait until you get done. You know what you want, right?
Yes, we do at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe different tomorrow. The other thing that we are recommending that the city council consider is canceling all advisory and ad hoc meetings, committee meetings until further notice, unless an emergency matter needs attention. Now, we've heard a couple of things this evening, right? We've heard of the park board considering the grant application that needs to be submitted until by March 27th. That may be an emergency situation where the park board needs to meet. I believe there was a planning commission item as well that we've also discussed. We have to figure out how we conduct city business in this new normal, at least in the time being. Mr. Chair, I believe Alderman Pritchett has a question.
You know, on that line, I know looking through some of these documents that you sent us, the state and Governor Walz had given some suggestions for e-meetings, that somebody be present at one of the buildings. That would probably be a sensible route to take to see what committee members would be able to do that. I mean, you can do it easy with Skype or Zoom or go to meeting. There's several apps that are out there.
And as of this afternoon, and again, in the spirit of everything changing, as President Johnson mentioned, the county was not going to modify how they were providing services with the public coming in. Now they are. The president now has recommended restricting it to 10, where when this packet went out, we were at 50. It just is constantly changing. This is where the city council has been able to meet. After this evening's meeting, we will no longer be able to meet in this facility. We need to identify another location. I have not had the opportunity to speak with Chief Holmes or Chief McQuiston about the availability of either PD or the fire department. But our upcoming meetings, we need to be talking about where that location is. And then, as Alderman Pritchett mentioned, following our open meeting laws, some of these meetings can be handled electronically, but there must be one council member present at the location where our meeting is being held. And right now, this is where our meeting is being held until we leave. So again, some unknowns.
Well, Tad's the new guy.
Well, speaking of, the Arboretum would be the next one. I don't know if they're canceling or not, but I had a conflict. I was going to remotely attend that one, but my conflict got canceled, so I'd be available.
Great. And last but not least, I think this is probably the easiest one, is just recommending that we temporarily restrict any business meetings, travel, training, out-of-state travel, including conferences until further notice, and requiring all staff to utilize telephone and video conferencing instead of face-to-face meeting, starting immediately and going in effect until further notice. So, as I mentioned, our world is just changing. We need to, as the city of Brainerd, figure out how we're going to respond and react. You will have business that you need to conduct. What does that look like going forward? I think there are a lot of questions if you look at how Italy and Spain and France have reacted to this and where they have come 2 weeks ago until where they are now. Is that something we can expect the United States at some point to be faced? I don't know. But I think we are best to err on the side of caution and plan for the worst and hope for the best. So along with some of these recommendations laid out before you this evening, we are also recommending that we schedule, and I'd ask you to adjourn to a meeting on March 19th, because again, as things have changed from Thursday to today, from this morning to today, we also recognize that things are going to change between now and March 19th. So we are asking you to put some placeholders on a couple of meetings so that you as a council can conduct business, so that we can bring further recommendations to you in the future. We are asking that you kind of placehold the 19th and also the March 23rd, which you are already planning on doing for the appointment of a new mayor. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to try to guide you through a motion. We can go through each item at a time. There may be additional things that you as council have thought about that we as staff have not considered yet or are not prepared to bring forward to you yet. I think there's a lot of research that we need to do as just to to remind you that we do have 7 unions. And so those are also discussions that we need to have with our union reps. And so this is ever changing. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer questions. You have several staff here that also can help address. We are working together as a team. What I will say to you is you have a great staff here. The department heads, the staff, very dedicated, very devoted to the city of Brainerd and making sure that we're doing the best job that we can.
And they've done a great job with their social distancing tonight, too.
Yes.
It's-
Yeah,
Everybody is
it's-
6 feet away from the
Yeah.
next person.
Well, 6 feet laterally, not necessarily.
I guess we do have
you
some
know,
from-
It's kind of a sphere thing, so.
But I think, does anybody have any questions, or do you want to kind of get into the recommended motions?
I just have one question, like, when you brought up the unions, I know I've read that Governor Walz has, through executive order, guaranteed the salaries of certain employees. Do you know which, have you looked to see which employees are covered? I know he directed that at schools particularly, but that would be something to look at also.
Yeah, schools, I think he was hospitality.
Yeah, I'm not sure what all it was.
I don't know.
Again, so much to research, so much to learn, and the reason for having subsequent meeting times.
And I think we did have the discussion, did he require that those positions be paid, or did he recommend that they work with? I mean, what we kind of heard was, try to incorporate your hourly employees, your para, your bus drivers, your food workers, that kind of stuff, but did he direct that have to continue to pay the full salary? So I think it's something we have to research further.
Well, I think a lot of them are totally different things, but yeah.
These are tough times, tough times.
Mr. Chair,
Jan.
there's one thing I think we all have to realize and recognize is the fact that I think we need to have a kind of a cooling down time so people can just become comfortable with the situation. I think there's so much stuff coming on. And I honestly I would like to see us not have any meetings at all this week.
I would disagree with that. I mean, there's a cooling down time when the dust has settled and you have a steady playing field or set of rules. With the way the rules are changing, I would not feel comfortable with that. I'd feel more comfortable having a meeting slotted for a Thursday that we don't need, rather than not having a meeting slotted and needing it.
I agree with that. I met with Jennifer to go over the agenda on Thursday, and we briefly talked about, she was already up to her neck in COVID-19 planning and research, but there were really no recommendations to get on the agenda or any real hard things needed. That was 3 or 4 days ago, and so much has happened. So I think having a placeholder for 4 days from now, just seeing what else may or may not change.
I'm sorry, no, I agree with that, but I'm talking about like our planning and zoning and that's what I apologize. I apologize.
The commissions, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I just think we should just, kind of just say, and have a meeting if is required for, yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. I think it's important it's important for us to calm down and just go smooth some stuff out, so.
I think the public in general needs to calm down
I
and be
hope,
careful
yeah,
of information overload. I don't think that necessarily applies for those of us who have volunteered and put ourselves in a position where we're responsible in answering for and caring for the well-being of the public.
I would piggyback on that. I think it's important for us to show that that things will continue to go forward. This isn't going to end things. We still have to continue to maintain at some point, and it's important for us as community leaders to make sure that we are standing up and
Right.
making sure that we're holding up our end of the bargain.
Start some motions.
Let's start some motions. What do you got for us, Jennifer?
So, Mr. Chair, my first recommended motion would be to, and I guess I would just recommend the motion state that we are recommending that we modify service delivery and close our city hall, parks, fire, and street garage to the public while most city services continue to fully operate at this time.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The recommended motion did not mention the police department.
She said,
When you read it,
Sorry.
you didn't. You intended police department to be included in that.
I
And
did,
do we
Mr. Chair.
want an end date? Are we closing for 2 weeks, or are we just closing until further notice? Kelly?
Mr. Chair, I think we can make this easier.
Yep.
I think we can adopt the recommendations by the city administrator based on this, this memo as a temporary 2-week policy based on CDC recommendations.
So just hit all 6 subpoints that she
Yep.
talked about and
Yep.
I,
sweeping adoption? I have no quabbles with
no,
that.
I would agree with
Gotta
that.
withdraw the motion and the other one?
I withdraw.
Withdrew
I
the
with- I
motion, withdrew the
withdraw.
second. You got a motion, Kelly?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the city administrator's memo dated March 16th on the COVID-19 recommendations based on CDC for 2 weeks, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
So you're looking at revisiting this in 2 weeks?
Are we meeting in 2 weeks?
Right, and we may have more
Sure.
things between now and then.
We're going to probably meet twice between now and then.
Right.
There is a 3-week gap in these council meetings, so just be aware of that. Of our regularly scheduled council
We
meetings.
have 5 Mondays in March.
Yeah,
We
it's
could-
the
we could go
16th.
So there is a
yeah,
3-week
it would
gap
actually be
here, so-
April 6th would be our next.
I would make it to our next council meeting.
Next regularly scheduled.
Next regularly scheduled.
And Mr. Chair, just for clarification, next regularly scheduled meeting, or city council meeting, April 6th,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
Okay,
So in effect, 3 weeks instead of 2.
all right.
Mr. Chair, do we need to change any of this wording in here, like the recommendation's gone down to 10?
I think
I would
Why?
think so.
Do we need to do that? You know, because the recommendation has gone down to 10, second paragraph.
Yeah, but I
But
don't think
that's
so
not
because
part of
it
what we're doing.
refers
That's not
to.
an action statement.
Yeah, it refers to the recommendations of the CDC on all of the action statements. So if the CDC changes their recommendations, the city of Brainerd is going to follow suit with or without
Part of
further
my
council
motion.
action.
I just seek a clarification on approving that memo. Are we, in there, we talked about advisory committees, so does this include, are we including planning commission, park board, TAC? Is it everything that's not city council? That's, as staff, would like to clear that clarification.
My understanding was yes, but there was a provision I heard her
Unless
say,
emergency
unless an
matters.
emergency
Needs attention.
needs attention.
So it'd be kind of administratively decided on, there is something that needs to be decided this meeting, and I think you'd make every effort to be as have your social distancing or remotely meet if possible.
And Mr. Chair, just if I may, thank you for your consideration of us making that determination on emergency. I would also suggest to limiting scope, limiting agenda items as to what those items, you know, that they are only meeting for those quote-unquote emergency items. For example, we have a grant application that's due on March 27th that we can't submit unless we have the authorization by the park board. I would consider that to be necessary, Mr. Chair.
The only thing I would add to that is that if you are going to hold a meeting, try to be forward-thinking about what could be covered in that meeting so that you're not calling another meeting to cover something else. You know,
Thank you.
Just keep a heads up on it, so we're not just calling a bunch of meetings because they're all emergencies.
And again, Mr. Chair, that would exempt the city council because I think you are going to have to meet.
Yeah, and tonight, I think we're going to adjourn to Thursday,
Okay, the 19th?
just, if needed. And you'll let us know by Wednesday night. Is 24 hours good enough?
I'm fine.
If we all know Thursday is tentative, it'll be Thursday night. See you there, Kevin.
Time, I don't know what time yet.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Coming around.
And Mr. Chair, members of the council, I would
That's
ask,
AM.
That's fine too. That's perfect.
I would ask that you be patient with us. We are trying to get you as much information as we possibly can, as quickly as we can, but as it continues to change, we'll just ask for your patience as we're, please know that we are trying to pull everything we can together so you have the most up-to-date information at the time that we meet. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I was talking to City Administrator Bergman earlier today, and you know how busy she is, and I would definitely be more than happy that if there's another meeting with staff or any of those situations where they need extra help, I said, hey, if you even need somebody to take notes and send it out, I would be willing to be present, if that's okay with the council.
I'm okay with that.
So, Mr. Chair, just for
Just to
clarification.
support them in their planning and meeting, yeah.
And then in addition, to have an elected official in the room, so the elected official that would represent you as the council as well, that could be a liaison to staff.
You're effectively our liaison to all of the staff now. Congratulations.
Corona liaison.
It's got feathers, many feathers.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item number 10 on the agenda, the public forum, time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the council. Time limits may be imposed. Is anybody here to speak at the public forum? Is anybody here to speak at the public forum? Paul's trying to get him up. Is anybody here
working
to
the
speak
crowd
at the
here.
public forum?
Rooting.
Nobody is. We'll close the public forum. Brings us to staff reports. Any updates since the packet? City administrator?
Mr. Chair, I think you've heard enough from me. My written report is in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Any other members of staff with any updates since the packet? No. Mayor Menk? No updates from Mayor Menk. City council member reports. Alderman Bedeau?
The only thing I just want to say is just kind of reiterate what we said earlier, is that, that this is an interesting time for everyone, and it's kind of uncharted for most of us. And I just want to make sure that we are allowing people to know that it's okay to question what's happening and to have concerns about where things are headed. But in the end, we will be okay. And I think that's really important for people to remember, is that it is uncertain, but we'll be okay.
Amen. I'm done. I don't have anything.
Same. Nothing to
Nothing.
report.
I have nothing to add.
I would just like to say, everybody should do their best to remain calm, okay? But remember, we are a community, and as a community, we'll get through this. So watch out for yourself, watch out for your neighbors. Those of you who know people that may be at risk or may have trouble being able to access things that are needed, call them, talk to them. That's the only way we're going to get through this. I mean, isolation is what's needed to be able to flatten the curve, but we shouldn't be isolated communication-wise and community-wise.
Nothing to add.
Take a motion to adjourn to a special council meeting to be held March 23rd at 6
How about the
PM.
19th?
So, 19th?
19th.
Place to be announced.
Oh, 19th, yeah, we didn't have that on the agenda, obviously.
23rd after that.
Yeah,
So,
adjourn to the 19th and the
moved.
23rd.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we vote on this, Jennifer, we don't have a location yet?
No.
Is there any place in City Hall that we could meet?
No, not that we can meet the guidelines of the CDC. I will be reaching out to Chief McQuiston and Chief Holmes to see if either the fire department or the police department would be available.
If you could get that to us as soon as
ASAP.
possible and get it to Teresa so
Got it.
she knows where we're going to be meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
All right.